everybody, Adam here from the Kettlebrook Model Railway, and welcome back to, once again, another video. As always, if you're new around here, please go ahead and click that subscribe button for more videos in the future. And if you enjoyed today's video, as always, please remember to give it a like, as it will be much appreciated. Right, everybody, today we're going to be looking at not just locomotive today, but we're going to be looking at a train set that Hornby produced many years ago. Right, everybody, let's jump into today's video then. So, as you know, at the time of this recording, it is the 1st of November, which means we are a month away from that little thing called Christmas. And of course, it means that everyone who's into model railways is going to start asking for certain things at Christmas when it comes to railways. And one thing that always seems to come up every Christmas on, certainly that I find on the internet and other things, is a Hornby train set. And infamously, they have done a fair few over the years, including myself, who bought one, or I say was bought one. I was bought one about 3 years ago. And I'm going to be looking at that particular train set today because you can still get this particular train set. And I'm going to give you my thoughts on it and, as always, review it and stuff like that. If you've watched any of my reviews before, you'll also know that I don't go into the mechanical side of it and also not the DCC side of it. Not that this set did have DCC anyway, so that would probably be irrelevant in this case anyway. But nevertheless, we're going to be looking at the Hornby Flying Scotsman train set today. And I'm going to give you my views on it, and also I'm going to show you the review of the locomotive. I will explain I don't actually have the complete set anymore, so the best thing for me to do in that scenario when I get to it is to show you what you get in the set via a picture, and then I'll do the talking and the description over the back of that, so that will be later in the video when I've edited it. I do still have the locomotive, and I will show you that in detail as well, just so it makes more sense, if that does make sense. It should do, hopefully, fingers crossed. Anyway, nevertheless, right, so we're going to dive into all that. We're going to look at the locomotive and everything like that, but as always, again, if you are new around here or if you're a current subscriber, you will know that I tend to do a background information into the real-life locomotive that I'm actually looking at in the review. So, as I mentioned, is the Flying Scotsman. Now, we all know it's, of course, the most infamous steam locomotive in the world. If I did a complete background information on the locomotive, we'd be here for about an hour. So, here is a brief background information into the world-renowned Flying Scotsman.
Number 4472 Flying Scotsman is an LNER Class A3 462 Pacific type steam locomotive built in 1923 for the London and North Eastern Railway, or LNER, at Doncaster Works to the design of Nigel Gresley. It was employed on a long-distance express passenger trains on the East Coast Main Line by LNER and its successors British Railways Eastern and North Eastern regions, notably on the Flying Scotsman service between London King's Cross and Edinburgh Waverley, after which it was named. Retired from British Railways in 1963 after covering 2.08 million miles, or 3.35 million kilometres, Flying Scotsman is described as the world's most famous steam locomotive. It earned considerable fame in preservation under the ownerships of successfully Alan Pegler, William McAlpine, Tony Marchington, and since 2004 the National Railway Museum in York. Flying Scotsman became a flagship locomotive for the LNER, representing the company twice at the British Empire exhibition, and in 1928 hauled the inaugural non-stop Flying Scotsman service. It set 2 world records for steam traction, becoming the first locomotive to officially clock 100 miles an hour in 1934, and setting the longest non-stop run of steam locomotive of 422 miles on the 8th of August 1989, while on tour in the Outback in Australia. In July 1922, the Great Northern Railway fled engine order number 297, which gave the green light for 10 Class A1 462 Pacific locomotives to be built at Doncaster Works, designed by Nigel Gresley. The A1s were built to haul mainline and later express passenger trains following the GNER's absorption into the London and North Eastern Railway. Flying Scotsman cost £7,944 to build at the time, and was the first engine delivered to the newly formed LNER. It entered service on the 24th of February 1923, carrying the GNR number of 1472, as the LNER had not yet decided on a system-wide numbering scheme. In February 1924, the locomotive received its name after the LNER's Flying Scotsman Express service between London King's Cross and Edinburgh Waverley, and was assigned a new number 4472. Following the nationalisation of British Railways on the 1st of January 1948, Flying Scotsman was renumbered E103 for several months before almost all of the LNER locomotive numbers were increased by 60,000 and became 60103 that December. Between 1949 and 1952 it wore a BR Express blue livery, after which it had been painted in BR Brunswick green. On the 4th of June 1950, now under British Railways ownership, Flying Scotsman was allocated to its new base at Leicester Central, running on the Great Central Railway main line, running between services between London Marylebone, London St Pancras, Leicester, Sheffield and Manchester. It would return to the East Coast main line in 1953, initially based in Grantham, before returning to King's Cross in the following year. In December 1958, the locomotive was fitted with a double cap chimney to improve performance and economy, but it caused soft exhaust and smoke drift that tended to obscure the driver's forward vision. The remedy was found in the German-type smoke deflectors fitted at the end of 1961. Amid rumours that the British Railway would sell the Flying Scotsman for scrap, the Gresley A3 Preservation Society failed to raise the £3,000 to buy it. Businessman and railway enthusiast Alan Pegler stepped in to save the Scotsman. Having seen the locomotive as a boy at the British Railway Empire exhibition and received $70,000 in 1961 for his shareholding in the Northern Rubber Company, Pegler bought the locomotive for £3,500, which in today's money would be $92,573. With the political support of Prime Minister Harold Wilson, on the 14th of January 1963, Jack Pexton of Copley Hill drove the Flying Scotsman for the final service with British Railways, hauling the 1315 from King's Cross to Leeds, with the locomotive coming off at Doncaster. The event attracted considerable media interest. Flying Scotsman had covered at over 2.08 million miles in 3 weeks short of 40 years in operation. Following an overhaul of the locomotive in the winter of 1968-69, Wilson's government agreed to support Pegler's running of the Flying Scotsman in the United States and Canada, hauling a 9-coach exhibition train to promote British exports. To comply with railway regulations, the Scotsman was fitted with a cowcatcher bell and buckeye couplers, an American-style whistle, air brakes and a high-intensity headlamp. The first leg began in October 1969 with a run from Boston, Massachusetts to Atlanta, Georgia via New York and Washington, D.C., and on to Slaton, Texas, where it paused for the winter. Despite a successful start, the tour ran into problems as strict anti-steam laws in some states deemed the engine a fire hazard, and either denied permission to run or required the train to be towed by a diesel or electric locomotive. Restrictions on foreign trains meant Pegler was not allowed to carry passengers and had to pay local railways to run on their lines. The tour resumed in 1970 with a run from Texas to Green Bay, Wisconsin, and across the Canadian border into Montreal. This was followed by a run from Toronto to San Francisco via the Rocky Mountains and Oregon in 1971. In total, 15,400 miles, or 24,800 kilometres. In 1972, Scotsman earned money running passenger trips on the San Francisco Belt Railroad and was put on show at Fisherman's Wharf. Despite a hopeful start, complaints from businesses along the route ended the trips and the train had to relocate to a less accessible yard, causing a 90% reduction of income. Pegler, now $132,000 in debt with considerable unpaid bills, declared himself bankrupt and in August arranged for the engine to be kept in storage at the US Army's Sharp Depot in Lathrop, California, to keep it from unpaid creditors, who by now were demanding payments and threatening legal action. Pegler worked his passage home on a P&A cruise ship, which led to a 7-year career as a cruise entertainer, giving lectures about trains and travel and enabled him to discharge himself from bankruptcy. Amid fears of the engine's future, steam enthusiast Alan Bloom asked businessman William McAlpine to help save it. McAlpine agreed and within a few days dealt with the attorneys, paid the outstanding debts owed to the local American and Canadian railways, and bought the locomotive for $72,000. In British money, that's £25,000. Flying Scotsman was shipped back to England via the Panama Canal, which cost McAlpine another $35,000. Upon arrival at Liverpool in February 1973, the engine travelled to Derby under its own steam with the en route link with crowds. McAlpine paid for its restoration at Derby Works and 2 subsequent overhauls in the 23 years that he owned and ran it. In October 1988, the Scotsman arrived in Australia for the country's bicentenary celebrations as part of the Australian Steam 88 Festival. Flying Scotsman covered over 45,000 kilometres or 28,000 miles during its time in Australia. Scotsman would arrive at Sydney and travel to Melbourne for the Australian Steam 88 Festival. After the celebration, Scotsman would continue tours in New South Wales with a tour to Brisbane. Following its longest part of the tour was the journey from Sydney to Perth via Alice Springs, As the first locomotive to travel on a newly built standard gauge line into Alice Springs, as well as being the first steam locomotive to officially reach 100 miles an hour, Scotsman achieved its second world record during its tour. It completed the longest non-stop run by a steam locomotive, 422 miles or 679 kilometres, between Parks and Broken Hill in New South Wales. Upon returning to Britain, Scotsman returned to its former British Railways condition with its number changed to 60103, refting of the smoke deflectors and double chimney, and repainted in BR Brunswick green. It retired from the main line in 92 following the expiration of its running certificate. In 93, McAlpine sold it to help pay off a mortgage on the locomotive. Music producer and railway enthusiast Pete Waterman became involved, and the two formed Flying Scotsman Railways, with Waterman running the business side of the partnership. By 1996, McAlpine and Waterman had run into financial issues and helped to pay off an overdraft, put Flying Scotsman on for sale. On the 23rd of February, interpreter Tony Marchington, already well known in the steam preservation movement, bought the locomotive and a set of Pullman coaches and the Southall depot for $1.5 million. He spent a further $1 million on the locomotive's substantial overhaul to mainline running condition, which lasted 3 years and at that point the most extensive in its history. In February 2004, a debt agency acting on behalf of Flying Scotsman plc announced that it would hold a sealed bid auction for the locomotive to be held on the 2nd of April. Amid fears it could be sold into foreign hands, the National Railway Museum in York announced it would bid and appealed for funds with a Save a Scotsman campaign. It secured the winning bid of £2.3 million, 15% higher than the second highest bidder, and entered public ownership, becoming part of the NRM's national collection. Following a major overhaul on the 7th of January 2016, Flying Scotsman moved under its own steam for the first time since 2005 on the East Lancashire Railway, where it completed several low-speed tests. Its inaugural mainline run was on the 6th of February with the Winter Cumbrian Mountain Express from Carnforth to Carlisle. Still wearing its 2011 wartime black livery with 60103 on the smoke box and its LNER wartime numbers, 103 and 502 on the cab sides, after it was restored to match its appearance in 1963. Scotsman returned to London's King's Cross on the 25th of February with a run to York. Thousands of people lined the route and the train was forced to stop due to members of the public trespassing on the line near St Nauts. In celebration of turning 100 in February 2023, Scotsman took part in various events between March and December, including static displays, runs on the main line and visits to heritage railways. A special 100 Years, 100 Voices exhibition was held at the National Railway Museum. A collectible £2 coin was produced by the Royal Mint, some of which were colour inspired with the locomotive's apple green livery, which marked the first colour coin produced in over 20 years. To this day, Flying Scotsman still and is the world's most famous steam locomotive. Right then folks, so as I mentioned that I actually don't have the full set anymore, so the best thing for me to do in this scenario is to show you what you get on the screen and then talk about each thing individually. It's probably the easiest way of doing it. So, this is the box that you'll be given if you purchase this train set, celebrating 100 years of the Flying Scotsman train set. So the box itself looks quite nice. It's a decent size and you do get everything as you can see on the screen, but I'm going to talk to you what you get and basically what I think of it. So I've got to mention as well, I would have already mentioned this if you watched any of my previous videos, my partner Katie bought this for me for a Christmas present. Had I think she known what you get, she probably would have gone and got me something a little bit different, because I think she probably realised. Bear in mind, she actually paid £100 less than what it is now. So I think that tells you something about the way, not only inflation is right now, but the way that Hornby are charging stupid amounts of money for things that ain't worth the money. And this is, of course, one of those situations. So let's start on the screen and show you each thing individually. And so you get in this set, as you can see on the screen, you get a set of curves. Not sure what the radius is, I'd have to double check on that scenario. You get 2 straight pieces, you get a set of points, 1 set of buffer stop, a small corner piece, the power track supply, where the power plugs into, hence the 2. You can see it on the screen, obviously I've already would have showed you. You get the red little tool which allows you to slide the locomotive onto the track, which I think is a little bit of a good idea. So that's one thing I would say they've done right in that. You get the locomotive Flying Scotsman, which I will show you more in detail in a minute, because obviously I mentioned I do still have the locomotive, so I can show you that one. You get 3 LNER teak coaches. You get your track mat, your power supply, and your power controller. So let's start with let's start going through each thing individually. So as you can see, you get your little play track mat, which you would allow to play on the floor, which I don't think there's anything more I could say about that. You get your power supply, which obviously is what you plug into the wall, and you get your controller. Now, I have to say, this controller is, I've seen a lot of people complain about this controller purely because it is, of course, plastic. Now, you have your red dial in the middle, which allows you to control the speed, and the little red thing to the right of the dial in the middle is actually the forward and reverse gauge, which obviously allows you to go back and forth. Now, having used this controller for a few months, I found a lot of issues with this. The first thing I noticed with this was the actual dial in the middle must have come off about 4 or 5, well, probably more than that. Honestly, it kept coming off. I had to keep putting it back on. In the end, all I was left with was literally the black thing underneath, and I was pretty much more meant to be using that to turn it because the red thing just didn't stay on. I've seen a few people say that this power supply doesn't work properly. It's quite flimsy, easily breakable, especially for kids using this. And the wire that you plug into the wall is very easily pullable as well. Now, if you accidentally put this on a table and the controller falls off, the wire is going to snap quite convincingly because it's just flimsy plastic, I've got to be honest. So that is a huge disappointment for me. So please bear that in mind. If you do purchase one of these, the controller is not the best. And as I say, I had my fair share of issues with it, so I'm sure you guys have had the same. Now, the coaches, as you can see. Now, you get 3 teak coaches. Now, what I haven't mentioned already, and I will explain to you when I show you the loco, this is actually a railroad set. Now, please tell me, look on the screen, look at the box, where does it say railroad? It does not say it anywhere on the box. So Hornby are essentially charging here £220 for a railroad train set for a child. Now, that for me is an absolute disgrace. You cannot justify charging nearly over £200 for a kid's play set. You can get an adult's train set for that price. Just because it's got the Flying Scotsman on doesn't mean you can justify charging that much amount of money. The coaches, which unfortunately I don't longer have because I got rid of them because of how poor they were, are genuinely just absolute poor quality. They're plastic. They've got no detail whatsoever other than the fact they've got LNER written down the side. That's literally it. Even the couplings are the old-fashioned couplings. It is a very, very disappointing display in my opinion, and it's definitely not worth the money. In terms of the loco, I do still have that, and that's what I'm going to be showing you in detail when we look at it on the track in a moment, and I'll give you the detail and runs through this, because again, disappointed to say the least. So yeah, please bear in mind, if you do purchase one of these, this is what you will get, hence what I'm showing you on the screen. You literally get nothing else. Now, you can actually also get the extension packs, which include more track. There are 6 of these, A, B, C, D, E, and F. They all come with different things as well, which I will show you on the screen. So A has a set of points, a few pieces of straight track, and then a curve bit. B has a few more, as does C. D includes a level crossing, and so on and so on. Now, if you want to get some of these to extend your track, you're looking at, if you're buying these off Hornby, bear in mind that the more stuff that you have, the price goes up. So track A is £25, B is 40, as is C, and then D, if you want to buy it off Amazon, you're looking at £50 for an extension pack. Again, I've got to be honest, I think that's an absolute waste of money. Bear in mind, you can actually buy Pico Track on any like retailer, which will do exactly the same job. And if you get the Flexi Track, you can actually bend it to how shape you want it. It just shows you that for me, it is a complete and utter waste of money. So that is a huge disappointment for me. So what we're going to do then, I'm going to get the train, I'm going to get the locomotive, I'm going to look at the locomotive in detail, and then we'll finish by running it. And I would say I'd give you my final thoughts, but I think you could probably guess where we're going with this already. But nevertheless, let's look at the locomotive then in detail and see how it compares. Right then, everybody, so after all that, here we have the locomotive then, and I'm going to look at this and I'm going to give you my personal opinions on it. So I would have already explained in the set that you get that, of course, the coaches you got were the teak coaches that were very poor quality, very poor detail, because they were railroad. And of course, the locomotive as well is also railroad. So again, as I mentioned, it doesn't mention anywhere on the set that it is railroad. So straight away, you're already looking at a disappointment, to say the least. Right, so the locomotive itself. So at the front, you have the smoke box where the lamp would be fitted. That's fine. The number is actually on the buffer beam, so that's okay. You've got the two lamps which we've added. They don't come with it, so don't be fooled by that. Right, down the side of the locomotive, detail-wise, you've got the pipes there. That's it. And that's literally it. The nameplate is there. That's not etched. It's just normal. And then at the top, you've not even got any whistles at all. You've got two safety valves. That's it. No whistle at all. The number on the cab, in my opinion, is too big. So that's disappointment. And of course, on the other side, it's pretty much exactly the same. The only thing that's actually metal on this side is the pipe down the side here, which is extremely fragile. So just be careful with that if you do actually get one of these. That's literally it in terms of detail. There's nothing else. And even underneath, there's nothing at all. And then even more disappointing, if you look in the cab, obviously you've got the driver there at the minute, but there's literally absolutely no cab detail at all. It's just a complete black background. You can see there. If I show you slightly, you've got a few things in there which you can see that should be detailed, but there's literally nothing. So that is extremely poor quality in my opinion. As for the tender, again, flimsy plastic, not very good at all. The LNER looks okay, but at the back you've got nothing other than the corridor connection to the coaches. That's it. And the coal looks okay in my opinion, but again, you know, if you're paying £200 for a set, you would expect the coal to look real, wouldn't you? Let's be honest. So overall, I have to say it is a very huge disappointment for me. And also another thing as well, bear in mind when you're running this round, the connection here, you got this little hook that hooks onto the locomotive. The amount of times you do this, particularly when you're using it on the set that you get, if you buy the set, when you put it down, look how easy it disconnects. The amount of times I've had to, even in the set we're doing now, the amount of times that I've had to literally pick the locomotive up again and reconnect the connection is ludicrous. You'd have thought that if you're using it for a kid, you'd have thought they'd have made one that's an automatic connection purely because it would stop the hassle of having to keep picking it up, reattaching it constantly. So I've got to be honest, that is hugely disappointing for me, which is very, as I say, if you're paying nearly £200 for a locomotive, well, a set rather, you should be getting better quality than what you're getting with this. I think this is very lousy, and I've got to be honest, I wouldn't recommend this set personally unless you want to be ripped off in terms of money. So that's my personal opinion. If you have something different, by all means, not a problem at all. But if I'm being honest, you're not going to spend £200 on this. Bear in mind, when I got this, it was £100 less, or about £70, £80, something like that. It's like, well, inflation I know has increased, but it's still a ridiculous price for what you're paying. Nevertheless, I'm going to give it a run on the track then and show you it running round because it needs to redeem itself in some way. So I'm going to flip it over to the track. I'm going to give it a test run and we're going to see how it operates running around with a load of coaches. Right, so here we have it on the track then, and you can straight away by looking at it tell it's very poor quality. I mean, it just doesn't look right at all. But again, as I said, what do you expect really when you when you don't advertise that it's a railroad locomotive? But hey-oh, what can you do? Right, nevertheless, we'll give it a run because it needs to try and redeem itself in some way. So let's start by giving it a little run forward. So that's at 30, so runs okay there. And then backwards. Yeah, so running wise it's okay, but again you would expect that really, wouldn't you? Right, let's get it on some coaches then and give it a run, and I'm going to also run on the other side. I've got another set of mat ones. Now I know the coaches are wrong for what I'm going to put on the other side, but to be honest with you, I haven't had the time to change them over to the teaks, because of course this would pull LNER teaks, but because it's a preserve locomotive you can sort of get away with pulling on maroons. So I do apologise if the coaches are wrong, but I haven't had the time to change them. I'm going to put the other A3 that Hornby have produced on the other side, and then I'm going to compare the two. Right, off we go then. So let's get this one going. Comes off nicely, and then as I say, on the far side we have the brand new Hornby A3. This is the Harvester one. By the way, if you want comparisons between two models, now of course I know the Flying Scotsman one is a railroad version, but that A3, the Harvester one, is an absolutely fantastic model. So it shows that they can do basically, like they can do a decent locomotive, because that one over there is absolutely brilliantly. It's got a firebox glow, it's got fantastic detail, it runs well. So it just shows you when they put the heads together, they can produce a very good locomotive. And bear in mind that one, at the time, I actually bought, well, we got it from Rails of Sheffield. We actually paid less than £200 for it, which I think was incredibly good value for money. So it just shows you really that if you don't want to be ripped off, then by all means, don't go for, in my opinion, as I say, don't go for this Flying Scotsman, because it is very, very poor quality and it's a lot of money for what you're paying as well. So I'm afraid to say, Hornby, I think you've let a few people down as well. So yeah, disappointing. The one thing I will say, it does run well. That's the only positive I can give it, to be fair. It does run well, but for the price you pay, you would expect it. It does have a flywheel, which does show it really, but if it's a brand new locomotive, as I say, you would expect it to run well. So that's my personal opinion. So as I say, everyone, my personal opinion, if you're looking to buy a train set this Christmas, please don't be fooled by the good-looking box for the Flying Scotsman, because this, for me, is a huge disappointment. It's extremely poor value for money. Quality-wise, it's poor. It does run okay, but at the end of the day, you could get a better price. I mean, Bachmann produced train sets, which I think are slightly better, in my opinion. But as I say, everyone's entitled to the opinion. So if you do want to get this set, I will leave a link in the description if you do want to get one of these for Christmas. But if it was me, I'd stay away, unfortunately. So everyone, I'll leave the video there. As always, thank you for watching. If you liked today's video, as always, please give it a like. That would be much appreciated. And thank you, as always, to everyone who's already subscribed. At the time of recording, we are literally on the brink of getting to 800 subscribers. So thank you, as always, for your support. It's much appreciated. And I will see you for more videos in the future. Take care, everyone. Have a nice day, and I will see you in the future. Goodbye.